What's up guys, welcome to Viewed and Reviewed for September 2021, the show where I review everything I viewed in that month. So, this month has been a little on the shorter side, let's be honest. So there's not quite as much this month. And why not, let's just get straight to it, shall we? Starting with Candyman 2021. So, Candyman is back and he's not quite as sweet anymore. If you want a full review, I have one on my channel, you can check that out. But here's the quick rundown. This film is okay. There are certain plot points and character turns that lack explanation and depth, certain events towards the end of the film that needed further fleshing out. The film also lacks scares. It has gorgeous visuals and great direction as well as good social commentary, but as a horror film, it kind of falls short. I enjoyed it overall, but I wanted a little bit more from it. Archer Season 11. The super spy is finally out of his coma and back to reality in Archer Season 11, which for some reason in the UK, we had to wait over a year for this. I don't know why. Anyway, this is a return to basics for Archer after having gone all sci-fi, noir and war story. It's good. I liked how it dealt with Archer's absence and how the world and characters have moved on. I thought each episode had a unique, fun adventure, and as usual, the voice acting was brilliant. This season does feature fewer jokes, I think, and I would have liked a bit more, but the ones that are there work pretty well. Speaking of which, I also liked how the show addressed some not so PC things it's said and done in the past. This is Archer finally starting to grow up a bit, and it's cool. The Night House. The Night House is two things. An examination in grief and loss, and a supernatural horror movie. The ways in which these elements blend together is great because you never know what to trust. How much is real? How much is a figment of the lead character's imagination? Who knows? Speaking of which, Rebecca Hall is fantastic in the lead role, really bringing this character to life in a likable and relatable way. You really get a sense of what she's going through throughout this film. The horror in the film is brilliant too. There is tension and suspense, and it features one of the best jump scares I've ever seen. Sadly, the final act of the film is a bit weird, and its explanation for everything that's really going on kinda took me out of it. Otherwise, I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Harley Quinn Season 2. The second season of Harley Quinn is great, plain and simple. It's so good that it's immediately one of my favourite animated shows of all time. Voice acting, jokes, action, direction, drama, romance, it's all really well done. There's much more of a serialized story this season where things wrap up and build upon what came before. The depiction of certain DC characters like Bane and Gordon are consistently hilarious too. Sometimes the show is crass for the sake of it, and the animation can at times be a bit basic. I mean, the backgrounds in the show, for example, are noticeably bland. The show isn't perfect by any means, but that's kind of part of the charm. Harley Quinn is not only one of DC's best characters, brilliantly portrayed by Katie Coco, it's one of DC's best TV shows ever. Vacation Friends. Two couples meet up on holiday. They're polar opposites of each other, but they hit it off and have a great time that they'll never forget, although some of them may wish they had. This film is surprising. It lacks any original ideas or concepts when it comes to story, plotting and characters, but it makes up for it with good jokes, great performances and chemistry. I had a lot of fun watching this film, and it had me laughing consistently. I will however say that the first half is noticeably better and much faster than the second half. The momentum does drop a little bit once the vacation itself is over, but the quality remains the same. I like this one, despite its problems. Oh, and John Cena is absolutely brilliant in it. Rick and Morty Season 2. Rick and Morty continues to be one of the most fun and phonetic TV shows around, even if this fifth season is by far the worst one so far in the show's history. Yeah, you heard that right. This season isn't as good as what came before it. Why? Well, it lacks brains sometimes. The show used to be very smart and witty, and its references matched that. The jokes, the humour and references this season seem very obvious, and a lot of the classic Rick and Morty humour is starting to grow a little old. Perhaps because so many shows now are starting to mimic the formula. I mean, Harley Quinn, the show I just reviewed moments ago, has very clear Rick and Morty influences. And there's going to be another one in this show today. So, overall it's a good show, but this season had some odd lows where things lacked the usual smarts. It relied on crass, low-hanging humour, obvious humour as well, more than it probably should have, and it also relied on big explosions and over-the-top action a little too much as well. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Marvel's latest hero is a good one. Shang-Chi is a great superhero movie that introduces a whole new world of possibilities for Marvel going forward. The film boasts good, funny, quirky characters. Also, one of Marvel's best, most sympathetic villains, and brilliant action as well. I mean, the action is reminiscent of the Raid movies, and that's high praise indeed. The set pieces, the cinematography, the direction, they're all great. The one flaw is the final act, which is full of exposition and CGI, and it suffers from relying on characters and locations we know very little about. Otherwise, this is a damn good fun film. And I've got a review on my channel, so check that out if you want more thoughts on Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Shameless Season 10. Shameless is a very consistent show, both in quality and in content. The show is never bad, but it rarely ventures into good or great territory, especially now that its best character has left the show, and that it's in the 10th season. Season 10 of Shameless is kinda just more Shameless. We're a year behind in the UK, so I know there is one season left, and that's a good thing. It constantly feels as though they're heading towards an end that just never comes. The characters are going in circles, taking one step forward and two steps back. I mean, how many times can Frank go back to being an alcoholic? How many career changes can these characters have? It's becoming very repetitive. Hopefully the 11th season will wrap things up in a nice, neat little bow. Luckily, the characters are really likable despite how horrible they are. I know, that sounds weird, but it's true, and the jokes and humour are good too, even if sometimes it gets a bit absurd and at times offensive. Those ones aren't quite as funny. It's a well-made show that it's running on fumes, basically. Worth. Michael Keaton stars as the lawyer responsible for putting a price on the people lost during the events of 9/11. This is a slow, methodical film about statistics, morals, ethics. Sadly, it never bothers to tell the audience any of the important details. It leaves us guessing. For example, much of the film is about the worth or value of a person, and yet we never find out what the result is. What is the worth or value of a person? We don't see a lot of the work that goes into discovering this. There are many arguments about what the worth is, but nobody flat out says what they want or what they think. It's weird, almost as if the writers didn't know the answers to the questions they were asking. Michael Keaton is good in the lead role, but the film doesn't give him much to do, and the film lacks excitement or thrills, which is weird for a thriller. So its one real draw is the subject matter, which is often overlooked. It's okay overall, but I wanted more details, more information, more thrills. Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1. Remember when I said there are a lot of shows influenced by Rick and Morty? Well, Star Trek Lower Decks is an example of how not to do it. This show is not good. On an animation front, everything looks and sounds great. I can't fault the animators or the voice actors or any of that sort of thing. The problem is the writing. Is this supposed to be a Star Trek show? If so, it lacks the drama and originality for its adventures to stand out. It also lacks unique, iconic characters. Is this supposed to be an adult comedy? If so, it lacks good jokes and humour. So much of this show is just characters shouting at each other, speaking as though they're constantly panicking. It's weird, and none of it feels as though it belongs in the Star Trek universe. Also, they constantly reference events, characters and places from past Trek shows, which aren't funny, and they make the world of the show seem very small. How does every Starfleet person know about all of this? Is there literally nothing else going on in the galaxy? Malignant. James Wan finally returned to his horror roots. Sort of. I say sort of because Malignant is more of a comedy than a horror, which is its biggest problem. The film has no idea what it is, and I have no idea what it wanted to be. There are scary bits. There are so many corny, cheesy moments and stupid character decisions as well. A lot of this film just made me burst out laughing. The problem is that I don't think the film wanted me to do that. The film presents itself as serious, despite being constantly ridiculous. At times, I actually thought this was a spoof in the same vein as the scary movie films. Is it? I don't know. I don't think so. If you watch the trailers, it presents itself as a serious supernatural horror. It isn't that at all. Anyway, I weirdly enjoyed this film, but not in the ways I think I was supposed to. There are some good action moments, great visuals and atmospherics, but the writing is just bizarre, and the tone and genre is all over the place and confusing. Check out my full review on my channel if you want more of my thoughts on Malignant. Copshop. Copshop is an homage to action thrillers of the 70s, particularly Assault on Precinct 13. It doesn't have the most detailed or sophisticated plot, nor does it have the best action or characters. However, it is fun and entertaining. The film takes place almost entirely inside a well-realized police station. It has characters who are interesting and quirky and fun, if a bit one-note at times and limited, and it has action that adds some excitement, especially towards the back end of the film. The film also features a compelling mystery that sadly becomes less compelling as soon as you start answering the big questions about it. So, the film is fun, and I liked it overall, but there was nothing surprising, unique, or mind-blowing about it. Oh, and the ending isn't great either, but I can't elaborate on that without spoiling it. There's also some good comedy in there as well from time to time. You better think about what you're trying to do to me, especially when you expect me to sit through a 2.5-hour film. Yes, Respect is a long and sometimes slow film. This is a pretty straightforward and traditional biopic about the legendary Queen Aretha Franklin. I'm a big fan of hers. The central performance is incredible. Jennifer Hudson better get an Oscar nomination for it. The costumes, the sets, the mise-en-scène, they're all great too. On a visual front, it's brilliant. The problems, well, like I said, the film's long. It's badly paced. There's far too much going on in it too. I mean, what's it about? The Star? The civil rights movement? Spousal abuse? Stardom? Fame? Religion? Faith? Substance abuse? The film doesn't know what to focus on, so it's kind of all over the place in terms of story and themes. The film also tries to tell the entire story of Aretha Franklin instead of focusing in on a specific time period. There's just a lot crammed in here, and not all of it gets the attention it deserves. I enjoyed this film. Its problems are noticeable and it feels all too familiar because we've seen a lot of this type of biopic now, and it doesn't really do anything different from the many other biopics out there. Final film is Kate, a Mary Elizabeth Winstead-led action thriller. Mary Elizabeth Winstead is an assassin who's only got one day left to live, so she wants answers and revenge. This is a fun action thriller that doesn't reinvent the wheel. It's got some great visuals, it's got a great lead performance by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and her chemistry with the other female character in this film, whose name I do not know sadly, is really quite good and fun as well. The action scenes are really good, sometimes a little over the top, sometimes a little gory and graphic, but I kinda like that. The problem is the story and the characters. The characters are stereotypical and one note for most of the film, except for Mary Elizabeth Winstead. But even then, we've seen characters like that before. The story is also a very typical revenge action thriller story. There's not a lot of depth to it, there's not a lot of interesting elements to it. The longer the film went on, the less I started to enjoy the story. Whenever there's action scenes in there, it's cool, it's fun, I enjoyed it. Whenever it's focused on the story, it's like, I could have done with a little bit more or something different. The back end of the film also suffers a bit as it starts to explain what's going on and it gets a little bit more dramatic. But otherwise, Kate is a fun hour and a half, hour 40-minute film that you might enjoy if you want something that's visually stylish and full of cool action. And that's September 2021 in a nutshell. All the films and TV shows that I've watched this month, viewed and reviewed. Let me know what you think about any of these. Check out some of my more in-depth reviews of certain films and TV shows on my channel, and of course subscribe to my channel. That's where you get all of my content up to date as I get them, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant_Burton as well. Until next month though, which will be October 2021, because that's how it works, I've been Grant Burton. Thanks for watching.